And it's improving very quickly, AI, ChatGPT, and now there's a functionality where you can access the voice chat and then turn the camera on, and now it can interact with the environment around itself.
The youth really need to be thinking, how on earth am I going to maximize my income growth and my capital growth?
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Way of Wealth with myself, Prajesh, and my co-host Mohammed. We don't have a guest today because I wanted to have a heart-to-heart chat with Mohammed about the global debt levels and deficit levels in the economy. A very romantic conversation, so let's get right into it. Now, I'm going to start off with some facts to ground us before diving into this conversation. So let's start off by defining GDP, which is a measure of the value of goods and services transacted in the economy in any one year. Now, the GDP of the top 3 economies in the world are the USA at $29 trillion, China, $18 trillion, and Japan at $5 trillion. Now, if we measured that against the debt levels in those economies, which is a cumulative measure of the amount of debt in the economy, essentially, across both the government and private sector and consumers, so you and I, essentially. In the USA, the proportion of the debt levels to the GDP is 123%. In China, it's 85%. And in Japan, it's 256%. Now, we were having an interesting conversation.
Can you check what EU is, Prajesh?
Yeah, sure.
While Prajesh is doing that, the debt to GDP, okay, the best way to actually think about that is, let's say if the government decided to completely not pay any public services, like let's not fund the NHS for a year, let's not fund the police for a year, the defense for a year, social welfare programs, let's not fund any of that, then roughly speaking, the UK would tend to take like a year or so to actually pay off all of that particular debt. Japan, you said, was like 273% or something, huh? Or 223?
256.
Yeah, so if it's 256, then you're looking at 2.5 years to actually pay all of that debt off. Obviously, that is very unrealistic. Okay, it would cause a lot more problems than it would actually solve. But yeah, what was your question?
Yeah, so just to update that list, the European Union's GDP is 17 trillion euros. And its debt to GDP ratio is 81%.
What's the UK, did you say?
You're making me go round and round.
Sorry,
okay. The UK, it's at $2 trillion.
Yeah.
And debt to GDP is at 100%.
Okay.
So it'll take 1 year.
Yeah.
1 year to pay that off if we stopped funding everything. Now, let's bring this back to the impact on us and the youth. What is the impact here of looking at these figures, very high levels of debt across the entire global economy?
Yeah. So how could youth be impacted? All right, think about getting your first job, second job, third job, whatever, all right? Your employer is going to have less money available to invest into their operations and development. That could mean wage increases happen incredibly modestly or not at all. You'd have to look at average earnings growth, okay? So I think right now, the UK factored in for inflation is somewhere around the 2.1% mark, okay? So it's negligible growth rate in terms of our wage increase. So I guess the youth wrong terminology. The youth really need to be thinking, how on earth am I going to maximize my income growth and my capital growth? The only way they can do that is increasing their skill set. They need to be investing in themselves, okay? And I said it in one of my other videos, right? Your degree is not enough. In actual fact, if you've got a Mickey Mouse degree, it's not going to get you anywhere. All right. If you're in, let's say, the STEM field, fantastic. There's a lot of opportunities in the STEM subjects. Okay. Because we've got a shortfall in STEM scientists effectively in the UK, and they're going to become, not only in the UK, globally in fact, okay, and they're going to become a crucial part of our economy. Okay, but you may not be in the STEM field. What happens to everybody else? I mean, new skills around AI, new skills around automation, they're going to be skills that every young person is literally going to need to master, okay, in developing their own careers, developing, improving their own skill set within the jobs that they already or they end up doing, because employers are going to demand that more and more. It's going to be like effectively using MS Office, right? Everybody today knows how to use MS Office. If you don't have, or let's say if you're not computer literate at this particular age, in this particular environment, okay, regardless of the economic problems we're having, okay, you're not going to be employable for the most part. Okay, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to find any sort of role. In the same way, if you don't have the skills that AI and automation can actually bring, you're going to affect your employability. But in addition to that, there is some space here, several years in fact, I think, okay, because most of the companies, even most of our clients, okay, business clients, they are very, very far behind in terms of improving their business efficiency. Whereas business efficiency could be radically resolved by integrating AI in so many different areas. Now that will have a number of negative consequences as well. It will lead to job losses. Okay, just look at how many functions we can actually do within our own business that previously we'd actually have to get some type of administrator involved. Okay, we're using a whole host of different solutions across CRM, using things like Zapier, using various other integrations to do all those mundane particular tasks that we would have got an administrator to do. Okay, all of that can be done largely by AI, and we're investing even more so in how to take the business forward in covering a whole host of other tasks, right?
Yeah, and it's improving very quickly. AI. I mean, I was just showing the guys off camera the ChatGPT, and now there's a functionality where you can access the voice chat and then turn the camera on, and now it can interact with the environment around itself.
Yeah, no
Now,
way.
this is far better than what ChatGPT was a year ago.
Yeah.
So to think about what it's going to be like in a year or two time, but just bringing it back to the impact on the global economy.
Yeah.
So we've got businesses here that are competing against each other.
Yep.
Now, if we have a business, let's just say our business,
Yep.
take for example, we're trying to adopt AI quickly,
Yeah.
and we're trying to essentially, where the businesses that adopt AI quickly can start to automate certain processes and automate certain workflows. Now, instead of paying, let's say for example, a blog writer £500 a month, we build an AI agent, the one-off fee, let's just say that costs £1,000.
Yeah.
Now that AI agent can start writing blogs based on the way we write, and automatically post that onto LinkedIn and wherever else. And we can then use that money we've saved to redirect it to more marketing.
Correct.
So getting a strategic advantage of our competitors, essentially. So,
having said that, though, Prajesh, though, you have to bear in mind, okay, any organization that does that, they need to have subject matter experts within their team. Because even when we're going through ChatGPT and it's producing a whole bunch of stuff, okay, we're assessing that before anything actually goes out, making sure it's all coherent, number one, and usually it is, but it's not always accurate. There could be like one or two things that just completely throw everything off.
yeah, of course, but the critical thing here is the time saving.
Yeah, no doubt. That's my point. That's my point. So it's definitely important. but you still need a subject matter expert in any particular business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise, you're going to lose credibility, man, quite easily and quite fast.
No, it's good we're experts in AI and what we do as well.
We're not
So-
experts in AI yet.
We are.
We're getting there. I would
not
say.
yet.
I would say
Go
though,
on.
we are.
We don't know how to code, but
I would say we're far ahead of so many other IFAs though,
Yeah.
and other wealth managers, no doubt, no doubt.
So what's the impact here on the labour market in the next few years? Because AI is improving rapidly, and I can foresee in a few years' time where we essentially can replace certain roles or certain elements to a role.
Yeah.
Now, what's the impact on the labour market, and then tying that into the global economic situation of high debt levels across, especially these particular countries?
Yeah, I think I'm quite negative here, right? I'm negative in the sense that I can see a lot of industries, losing a huge chunk of their workforce because they are forced to become more efficient. And they are forced to become more efficient because they need to reduce their production costs. Especially as we're moving into more of the nationalistic silos, right? Largely on the back of, I wouldn't say on the back of the Trump agenda in trying to hike up tariffs on every other country, foes and enemies alike. Sorry, foes and friends alike. Okay, but automation will no doubt create a whole host of job losses. I expect that to happen. For the sake of companies becoming more efficient in lowering their production costs so they can become more competitive on the international markets. That's the way I actually look at it. Okay. Having said that though, if you have now hundreds of thousands of additional people who were formerly very skilled in a previous economic environment, okay, now out of a job, in addition with the 11.5 million who are unproductive in the UK economy anyway, because they've got a whole host of problems themselves, disabilities, mental health problems, and so forth. And there is an argument to say the government or social policy has a big part to play in the degradation of one's mental health, right, across society. There's an argument there. Okay, let's park that for a second. The crucial issue here is we need to become more competitive in a global economic landscape.
Right.
Because how are we going to compete against the likes of producers in China or Vietnam or Bangladesh or anywhere else in these emerging countries, emerging economies that have a far younger labor force and a far higher birth rate? When we have an aging population
And a decreasing birth
and
rate.
a decreasing birth rate.
Yeah.
Okay. In fact, when I've looked at this, thought about it, I think the area that most people are not actually talking about is Africa. I actually think Africa could be an economic powerhouse if it continues in the trend that it's been taking over the last decade or so.
No, it's interesting you mentioned that because Nigeria is projected to be a very highly populated, it already is a very highly populated country at the moment, but Nigeria will definitely be a powerhouse in Africa.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But what's also interesting about AI as well is the convergence of both AI and something called quantum computing.
Yep.
So I'm going to get a little bit nerdy here.
Yep.
So I will the glasses. So
I'll wear glasses too.
both nerds together. Now, quantum computing essentially is the difference between traditional computing, where the underlying calculations are based on ones and zeros. But it's a very binary calculation. There can only ever be, in the calculation, it can only ever be a 1 or a 0. It's binary. Now, in quantum computing, when you're looking at them, essentially, it's the physics at the molecular level. When you're not observing a particular object.
The atomic level, right?
The atomic level, sorry. Yeah. Well, I think it's even below that, quarks.
Yeah, like quarks,
It's nuts. Anyway,
Sorry, subatomic. Forgive me. The
Yeah, subatomic level. Yeah, the quarks that make up the atoms.
Yeah.
Essentially, in a computer, a calculator here can either be a 0 or a 1.
Yeah.
And it can be both at the same time. Now, it's only when a calculation is processed that it can compute vast amounts of calculations incredibly quickly, because all these zeros and ones are both at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's developing alongside AI. And
That's going to scupper Bitcoin, man. As
Yeah.
well. That's another thing.
Yeah, that's another
Alright,
thing.
But,
We'll
yeah,
discuss that another
we'll
podcast.
discuss that.
And
Can I touch on it? Actually, let me
Go
touch
on.
on a little bit of it, all right?
go on.
So Bitcoin, okay, is based on blockchain technology, all right?
Yeah.
So the idea is it's the most encrypted piece of technology right now ever, until you get quantum computing.
Why is
So-
it so well encrypted?
Because of the way the blockchain actually works.
Okay, because the buyer is anonymized through the
Correct.
through the decentralized system.
Well, it's not necessarily because it's decentralized. Okay, so you can get blockchain technology that is all centralized in a particular system. The crucial thing here is the way the actual blockchain it works. Okay, it is encrypted all the way through. Okay, so you got this ledger system.
Right.
All right, that has to be updated only once you've confirmed, once the mathematical calculation has been confirmed by so many other different peers in
Yeah,
that
that's
particular
right.
group, right?
Yeah.
But once you get into quantum computing can arguably crack that in a fraction of the speed than we can actually now.
Right,
theoretically.
because it's performing all these calculations
Exactly.
in a very short
Exactly.
period of time.
Exactly.
Okay, so,
So-
do we sell Bitcoin now?
I'm saying sell Bitcoin.
Because there is going to
I'm-
become a common
I'm
point.
anti-Bitcoin anyway, right? I'm very much anti-Bitcoin, anti-crypto, not only from an investment side,
Yeah.
but purely from an ethical side as well.
Right.
This is where I would be on the side of practically every government in the world, because I think Bitcoin or any sort of crypto will empower private enterprise, and I don't think that's the right way to go.
Right.
Because the economy is so sensitive, it should never be in the domain of the private individual. Okay, it should always be in the domain of the government. Now, the government may be a bunch of tossers. That's another point, all right? There may be a bunch of tossers on one side, all right?
Right.
But
There's two
it's-
bleeps for that, by the way.
Sorry.
For toss.
Yeah, that's true. Sorry. Yeah, we do need bleeps.
It's better
To
than
be
the other
fair, though,
podcast when you
but
say
to
the
be
other
fair,
one.
though,
But go on.
all right, I'm probably the person who you probably know swears the least, right? I don't say any bad swear, really bad.
Yeah, you only
swear
swear on the
words.
podcast.
I only
What's-
swear on the podcast.
And I only swear off the podcast.
Exactly.
Right.
Where were we?
Government being.
Oh yeah, government
Yeah.
being. Yeah, so
Yes.
yes, it's down. Yes, so I would say it's down to the population and, let's say, institutions, okay, to hold the government in check.
Right.
No doubt. All right, I fully agree with that. But
Okay.
ultimately, you need to have intelligent people who understand sociology, psychology, who can think on a micro and a macro level to determine financial/economic policy. Because economic policy is going to be the difference between you eating and not eating. It's going to be the difference between your security and your insecurity.
Economic policy is going
I'm
to.
talking about economic policy here.
Okay. Why is that?
Okay? Because it drives everything, Prajesh.
Okay.
Buying and selling, our trade. Okay? The type of relationships we have with other governments around the world.
Why economic policy and not our own personal decisions affects those, whether we eat or not? Right?
Yeah.
We work hard. We
Yeah,
generate
no, of
revenue.
course. No,
and then
we're
we
part
can
of
eat.
the economic system.
Right.
All right? Okay, but when we're buying and selling, and if the government decides to ramp up our taxes and more so, watch your space, Keir Starmer, because we may just move to Dubai. but imagine if they ramped up tax,
Yeah.
okay, even more than it is now, it could become economically, let's say, disastrous
Right.
for entrepreneurs to set up a business in the UK. Hence why we're seeing, 10,000 millionaires in the last months who've left to other jurisdictions around the world. That's 10,000 people in 1 month who are economically active, who've got significant amounts of capital, who've got access to significant amounts of capital.
So-
Where is that capital going?
So an interesting question there is
Yeah.
that it might be a great idea to tax the rich, but we deal with this. The issue with the rich is that they're internationally mobile. And
I'm not saying it's a great idea to tax the rich. All
yeah.
right.
So my question.
Right, go on.
Hypothetical situation. Let's tax the rich. They move abroad.
Okay.
They take their capital with them. They
Yep.
start investing less and less in the UK economy. How does that trickle down to the middle class and then the youth? And
In the new country?
No, in the UK.
But you're saying
So
they're,
we're taxing the
they're leaving
rich.
the country.
Okay, look.
They've gone, man. They're on the plane.
Yeah, they're literally on the boat. Yeah, they're private jet, not the boat.
No, it's not even their private jet. No, coming back, just to clarify. Well, when we're talking about wealthy, okay, we're talking about people who are earning more than 70 grand a year. So we see some really popular economists who are now on YouTube quite a bit, and they're advocating taxing the rich, right? I won't mention any names, okay? But having said that, what happens? But they don't ever define. Sorry, they don't ever define who the rich is. Okay, is it those with 100 grand in the bank account, 200 grand in the bank account? Okay, because someone who's on welfare would probably think that guy with 100, 200 grand in the bank account is incredibly rich. Okay, is it the guy earning 70 grand a year, or the girl earning 70 grand a year, or 100 grand a year, 200 grand a year, 300 grand a year? Okay, and they've got a couple of million property portfolio. I mean, is that rich? Okay, or is it the person who's got 20 million in the bank account, 50 million in the bank account? But,
it's all relative.
yeah, no doubt. But that person with the 20 million in the bank account, he's probably created like 1,000 jobs in the UK. Okay, so let's get rid of that guy. Right, where's your 1,000 jobs gone? Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
Okay, so I think the key word here is equity.
Right.
What is fair? Okay, what is fair in the sense of taxing whoever it is at whatever social class you may be in, equitably. And we should never, ever penalize success. Okay? And it's fundamentally important. If you penalize success, where's the motivation going to go?
Thank you for listening, and tune in next week for part 2.